This is the definitive aerial arsenal of the United States Armed Forces in Korea, from the propeller-driven fighters of World War II to the first jet-versus-jet combat in history, a complete catalog of 50 American military aircraft used in the Korean War. Let's begin with the fighters, the Sabres and MiGs, the jet-age warriors. North American F-86 Sabre, the legend of MiG Alley. Fast, sleek, and deadly in a dogfight, this swept-wing beauty had a kill ratio of 10-1 against Soviet MiG-15s, making it the undisputed king of jet combat. Armed with 650 caliber machine guns, it could reach speeds of 687 miles per hour. For 3 years of war, American pilots and Sabres hunted MiGs over the Yalu River in the first jet-versus-jet battles in aviation history. Republic F-84 Thunderjet, the Hawk. While the Sabre got the glory fighting MiGs, the Thunderjet did the dirty work, flying more ground attack missions than any other jet in Korea. It could carry 6,000 pounds of bombs and rockets, and pilots loved its ruggedness. Lockheed F-80 Shooting Star, America's first operational jet fighter. On November 8, 1950, Lieutenant Russell Brown flying an F-80C scored the first jet-to-jet kill in history when he shot down a Chinese MiG-15. By 1951, it was moved to ground attack duties, where its 8 rockets and 2 1,000-pound bombs made it a feared tank killer. Lockheed F-94 Starfire, the all-weather interceptor equipped with radar in the nose and an afterburner. In January 1953, an F-94B scored the first radar-guided air-to-air kill in darkness, proving that the age of blind night fighting was over. Grumman F-9F Panther, the Navy's straight-wing jet that flew 78,000 combat missions during the war. On November 9, 1950, a Panther pilot named Lieutenant Commander William Amon became the first Navy pilot to shoot down a MiG-15. McDonnell F-2H Banshee, the twin-engine naval jet that served primarily as a photo reconnaissance aircraft, sneaking into enemy territory with speed and high-altitude performance. Douglas F-3D Skyknight, the flying whale, ugly, slow, and absolutely deadly at night. On November 2, 1952, a Skyknight crew scored the first radar-guided night kill of a MiG-15. By war's end, Skyknights had shot down more enemy aircraft at night than all other Navy night fighters combined, with 0 losses in air combat. North American F-51 Mustang, the World War II legend still fighting. While it couldn't dogfight MiGs, it was perfect for ground attack, and the Mustang flew more sorties in Korea than any other Air Force fighter. Chance Vought F-4U Corsair, the bent-wing bird of the Marines and the most effective ground attack aircraft of the Korean War. Marine pilots flying from rough forward airstrips provided close air support so accurate they could drop napalm within 100 feet of friendly troops. Grumman F-68 Hellcat, the carrier workhorse in the early days that flew combat missions in the first months before being replaced by jets and Skyraiders. Grumman F-7F Tigercat, the most powerful propeller fighter America ever put into service. In Korea, Marine night fighter squadrons flew radar-equipped Tigercats hunting for North Korean supply trucks moving under cover of darkness. Grumman F-8F Bearcat, designed as the ultimate dogfighter, but arriving when jets had taken over. A handful flew in the opening months before being withdrawing. Moving on to the bombers and strike aircraft, the hammer of American air power, Boeing B-29 Superfortress, the giant that won World War II, now struggling in a new kind of war. This 4-engine heavy bomber could carry 20,000 pounds of bombs, but the MiG-15 changed everything. Chinese MiGs could climb higher and faster than the Superfortress, forcing B-29s to fly only at night or with heavy fighter escort. Still, they dropped 167,000 tons of bombs on North Korea, more than all the bombs dropped in the Pacific during World War II. Douglas B-26 Invader, the Night Stalker that became the workhorse of the air war. Packed with up to 14 50 caliber machine guns in the nose, it hunted North Korean supply convoys in the darkness and flew over 60,000 combat sorties. North American B-45 Tornado, the first jet bomber ever used in combat. With 4 engines and swept wings, it could reach 570 miles per hour, making it nearly impossible for propeller-driven fighters to catch. Douglas AD Skyraider, the flying dump truck. This single-engine attack plane could carry 8,000 pounds of ordnance, more than a B-17 Flying Fortress. Navy and Marine pilots flew it from carriers, and it earned a reputation for being nearly indestructible. One Skyknight returned to base with over 250 bullet holes. Martin B-57 Canberra, the British jet bomber built in America that arrived near the end of the war in 1953. It could reach 470 miles per hour and climb to 48,000 feet, well above most anti-aircraft fire. Curtiss SBC-2 Helldiver, the dive bomber that flew from carriers in the early months before being replaced by Skyraiders and jets. Grumman TBM Avenger, the torpedo bomber turned utility aircraft that flew anti-submarine patrols and dropped flares for night bombing missions. Republic F-84 Thunderjet in the fighter-bomber role destroyed more ground targets than any other aircraft in Korea, with its ability to carry heavy bomb loads while still being fast enough to escape. Lockheed F-80 Shooting Star in ground attack configuration found new life after being outmatched by MiG-15s, flying thousands of missions with 8 rockets and 2,000 pounds of bombs. North American F-51 Mustang as a fighter-bomber carried up to 2,000 pounds or 10 5-inch rockets, with long range allowing it to fly deep into North Korea. Next, the reconnaissance aircraft, the eyes over enemy territory. North American RF-80, the photo jet that saw everything. Flying at 500 miles per hour and 30,000 feet, RF-80 pilots photographed every bridge, airfield, and supply depot in North Korea, and the speed made it nearly impossible for anti-aircraft guns to track. North American RF-51, the Mustang with a camera that flew low and fast over enemy territory to photograph troop movements and identify targets for fighter bombers. The low altitude made it dangerous work, and many were shot down by ground fire. North American RF-86, the Sabre spy that could fly deep into China and North Korea at high speed and altitude. The swept wings and jet engine made it fast enough to outrun intercepting MiGs, though it carried no weapons to fight back. Douglas RB-26, the night photographer that carried cameras and flash bombs to take photographs in complete darkness. Flying at night over North Korean roads, the crew would drop a flash bomb that lit up the ground like daylight for a split second, while cameras captured images of enemy convoys. Boeing RB-29, the Superfortress with cameras instead of bombs that flew at extreme altitude, sometimes as high as 35,000 feet, photographing entire cities and military installations. Some RB-29s were shot down by MiG-15s, proving that even at high altitude, reconnaissance was deadly work. North American RB-45, the jet reconnaissance bomber, whose speed made it valuable for photographing sensitive targets in China and along the Yalu River, reaching areas and returning before enemy fighters could intercept.
The lifeline of the war, transport and cargo aircraft. Douglas C-47 Skytrain, the workhorse that never quit. Built in the 1930s and used in every theater of World War II, the C-47 was still hauling troops, supplies, and wounded soldiers in Korea. It could carry 6,000 pounds of cargo, or 28 fully equipped soldiers, flying into rough dirt airstrips just miles from enemy lines. More than 200 C-47s served in Korea, delivering ammunition and food while evacuating wounded on the return flight. Curtiss C-46 Commando, the bigger brother that could carry 10,000 pounds of cargo or 40 troops. During the Chosin Reservoir campaign in the winter of 1950, C-46s flew through snowstorms and sub-zero temperatures to drop supplies to surrounded Marines. Douglas C-54 Skymaster, the 4-engine giant that could carry 26,000 pounds of cargo or 86 troops across the Pacific Ocean. C-54s flew the long route from the United States to Japan and Korea, bringing in replacement troops and spare parts. Fairchild C-119 flying boxcar, the odd-looking cargo hauler with twin booms and a boxy fuselage. The rear clamshell doors could open in flight, allowing it to drop supplies by parachute or even vehicles and artillery pieces, carrying up to 20,000 pounds of cargo. Douglas C-124 Globemaster II, the heavy lifter that could carry 68,500 pounds of cargo, more than any other American aircraft. With clamshell nose doors, it could load tanks, trucks, and helicopters directly into its cavernous cargo hold. Fairchild C-123 Provider, the assault transport designed to land on short, rough airstrips close to the front lines. Though only a few saw service before the armistice, it proved the concept of tactical airlift. Douglas R-4D and R-5D, the Navy's versions of the C-47 and C-54, serving with Navy and Marine squadrons to fly supplies to aircraft carriers and shore bases. Grumman SA-16 Albatross, the amphibious lifesaver. This twin-engine seaplane could land on water or regular runways, and when fighter pilots were shot down over the ocean, SA-16s would fly out, land in the water, and pull them from the sea. The Albatross saved dozens of American airmen who would have otherwise drowned or been captured. A new era of warfare. Helicopters and observation aircraft, the Angels of Mercy. Sikorsky H-5 Dragonfly, the helicopter that changed everything. Before Korea, helicopters were experimental machines that nobody quite knew what to do with. The H-5 proved their value by evacuating wounded soldiers from battlefields where no airplane could land, carrying 2 wounded men in external stretchers mounted on the sides. Medical officers calculated that the H-5 cut combat deaths by 50% simply by getting wounded men to hospitals within an hour instead of days. Bell H-13 Sioux, the iconic bubble helicopter with its goldfish bowl canopy and exposed tail boom. Smaller and more agile than the H-5, it could land in even tighter spaces with 2 wounded soldiers in litters strapped to skids on either side of the pilot. Sikorsky H-19 Chickasaw, the game changer that could carry 6 wounded men inside its fuselage, protecting them from the elements. Arriving later in the war, it was the first true transport helicopter in combat, able to lift a squad of troops or carry supplies to mountaintop outposts. Sikorsky H-03S, the Navy's rescue helicopter that operated from aircraft carriers and destroyers. With pontoon floats, it could land on water to pull pilots from life rafts, and every carrier strike force had at least one H-03S hovering nearby during flight operations. Piasecki HRP Rescuer, the flying banana, with its tandem rotors and distinctive upward curved fuselage. The Marine Corps used it for cargo hauling and troop transport, able to carry 10 troops or 2,000 pounds of cargo. Piper L-4 Grasshopper, the eyes of the artillery. This tiny 2-seat plane was so slow that enemy fighters couldn't shoot it down without stalling, and artillery spotters flew low over enemy positions, radioing corrections to gun crews miles behind the lines. Cessna L-19 Bird Dog, the modern spotter that arrived in 1950 with a 213-horsepower engine. Artillery observers loved it because they could stay over the target area longer and see farther, and it could carry 4 marking rockets to identify targets for fighter bombers. Finally, the specialized weapons, pushing the boundaries of aviation. Republic F-84G Thunderjet, the nuclear-capable variant. While earlier F-84 models flew ground attack missions, the F-84G was modified to carry nuclear weapons. Though it never dropped an atomic bomb in Korea, the mere presence of nuclear-capable aircraft sent a message to China and the Soviet Union. Boeing KB-29 Tanker, the gas station in the sky, converting B-29 Superfortress bombers into aerial refueling tankers extended the range of fighter jets dramatically. Using a hose and drogue system, KB-29s could transfer thousands of gallons of fuel to thirsty jets over the ocean or deep in enemy territory, allowing F-84 Thunderjets to fly non-stop from Japan to targets in North Korea and return safely. Grumman SA-16 Albatross, in dedicated rescue configuration, carried additional equipment for saving downed pilots, including rescue hoists, extra medical supplies, and crew members trained in emergency medicine. Some were painted bright yellow to be easily visible to pilots in the water. Boeing WB-29, the weather reconnaissance Superfortress that flew into typhoons and winter storms to measure wind speed, temperature, and atmospheric pressure. The data they collected helped mission planners choose the best days for major strikes. Lockheed T-33 Shooting Star, the trainer that became a combat aircraft. Designed as a two-seat training version of the F-80 fighter, some T-33s were pressed into combat service when the war started and jet fighters were in short supply, flying reconnaissance and light attack missions in the early months. 50 aircraft that defined the first jet war, from the legendary Sabres dueling MiGs over the Yalu River to the helicopters that revolutionized combat rescue. This fleet represents the bridge between World War II and modern air power. Which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments.